Hi, how you doing? Thanks for listening. This is me, soothing Will voice. Not bombastic, just soothing. It's Two Christians Watch ASMR. You can hear me talk about better movies than Harry Potter. That is a pet rat for the Weasleys, noshing on some cheese in the background.
Okay, hey, we're back. We're back. Will, we are on number 3. We've watched 3 films so far. We are on Harry Potter, Prisoner of Azkaban, in our Harry Potter Watch Through series. For Two Christians Watch, I'm Hannah. That's Will. And we were Christian kids who were not allowed to read or watch Harry Potter growing up, and now we're watching it for the first time and reacting to it. And we're supposed to kind of, I guess, be talking about, like, is there any, like spiritual value in this? But we've kind of just been complaining about these past 2 movies.
I mean, we've talked about the overall moral of each movie going forward, about, rules and regulations, and do they matter? How do we answer to them if they are not going to actually help the problem? We talked about love, and is love a finite thing? Is it a super powerful force that's even more powerful than wizardry? And so we'll go forward with that a little bit as we enter into The Prisoner of Azkaban.
The Prisoner of Azkaban. And I will say right now, we were going to have a rating system, and we didn't do that for the last 2 movies. So we want to do a quick rating system just before we jump into it, out of 10.
So 1 would be, do you want to do 0? 0 is awful, almost completely unwatchable. Think like some low budget film that was made, like monster movie from like the 60s, that is ridiculous and hard to watch. 10 would be something. What would be a 10 movie example for you, Hannah?
A 10 movie? Okay, so a film that is because this is not like, is this high art? I would say this is like, it's watchable, it's understandable, it's enjoyable, and has significance as art.
I would also say, acting is, on point. These actors are taking their role seriously.
Right.
And the story is compelling.
Okay, so a 10 out of 10 film, staying in the fantasy genre. I think the best one out of all of them is Return of the King critically for Lord of the Rings, right?
Yes.
So let's say that's 10. Lord of the Rings.
Return of the King.
Return of the King, and then 0 is the animated ones from the 70s.
Got it.
I'm just kidding.
No, you're not kidding, because they are awful. And I know there's somebody out there who's probably listening, maybe our pastor listening, and, about to say something about how wonderful these movies are. They are not. The animated ones, don't watch them, please.
Or 0 can also be going with Narnia, the
BBC
Narnia with the frightening Mr. and Mrs. Beaver.
Human-sized beavers.
Yeah, that's a 0 for sure. We need to watch that for the podcast. Maybe next year. We're all filled up this year, but we'll watch it because I've never seen it all the way through. I've only seen like scenes from it.
Anyways, so you get the idea. When we give the rating, you can see where it would fall. So far, none of them have been below 5, which is a good thing. Hopefully, none of them will fall below 5.
5 below? We want to go?
Right now, yeah. But yeah, so none of them have been below 5. We've seen fantasy movies below 5 before, and I'm sure hopefully one day we will talk about them. But we will get to the grade soon. But that just gives you an idea that where this stands in our voting, but also kind of its watchability as people who have never seen Harry Potter, kind of coming in at least objectively to this.
So I'll do my ratings for all 3, and then you'll do your ratings for all 3 so far. Number 1, I think it's like a solid 5 out of 10. It was like, it's good. I enjoyed it. But it wasn't like amazing. Chamber of Secrets, I think we talked about giving it 6 out of 10. We felt Chamber of Secrets was better than the first one, even though it was almost like a repeat of the first one. I'm going to go so far as to give Prisoner of Azkaban like a 6.5. I kind of want to give it a 7 because I liked this one more than the ones before it.
I think I would give the first one, which was the The
first one was Sorcerer's Stone, but it felt very much like Chamber of Secrets.
Right. So Sorcerer's Stone, because of a lot of things, including bad CGI, I give it a 5. I think that's fair, especially as the first one into a franchise. I really liked Chamber of Secrets. I think it took everything from the first one and made it better, more fine-tuned. So I give that one a 7, and hopefully is the only 7 of this saga, because I'm just being obstinate. But I would give The Prisoner of Azkaban a 6. I think it took a step back in quality, and in writing style and coherency. but we'll get to that.
Okay, so I will kick it over to Will. He's the summary guy now. He starts our summaries off. Sometimes I pick them up, but I'll let you summarize Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and then we'll get into our talking points.
So once again, we start this lovely movie off back at Harry Potter's adopted guardian household, where they are verbally abusing him and treating him like trash. He uses magic outside of Hogwarts. He is using magic illegally to basically curse a woman who is yelling and making fun of his dead parents. He cursed...
Pretty sure played by the Trunchbull from the original Matilda. Just saying, I think it's her.
Anyways, he basically curses her to inflate to a hot air balloon size, and then she floats off into the sky. He then just decides to ditch his house and be on the road, where a magic, not school bus, but passenger bus.
The magic school bus shows up. Could you imagine?
A magic passenger bus shows up. And this is one of the big parts where I took points off, because it is the most nonsensical thing I've seen in a long time in a film. It doesn't make sense that they know he was there, because he's just on the side of the road. It doesn't make sense they know he's there, because they don't know who he is. They have to ask who he is. They find him, and then it's basically they throw the rules out the window. The whole idea of you can't do magic in public. This is a magic bus. This bus shrinks and grows and gets thin and goes real fast in public, in front of people, and they just shrug it off as like, oh, people won't notice. They have a scene where they're in front of two double-decker buses and they go between them. They shrink and they get thin and go between them. People are going to notice that. And so it's just kind of nonsensical. It's going real fast to be silly. It's a bunch of slapstick comedy. It's completely tonally off. It's off-putting. And then Harry finds his friends in Diagon Alley again. And yes, because he goes, huh?
Were they in Diagon Alley in that movie?
Yeah, because they were all at that's where they get remember he goes downstairs and they're sitting there.
Oh no, they go to the Leaky Cauldron,
which is in Diagon Alley.
It's like between Diagon Alley and London.
Okay.
But the Leaky Cauldron, he can like stay there. Remember, doesn't he stay there or something?
He stays there overnight until he goes downstairs and he sees his friends, and so they all get together and they go to Hogwarts. And on the way to Hogwarts, he finds out that a character named Sirius Black is coming to kill him because he was the person who killed his parents. And Sirius Black was the prisoner of Azkaban. He escaped prison and was on the run. He is a murderer and he is a threat, and he's very powerful in magic. So the prison has sent Dementors to the school to hunt him down. Problem is, these Dementors have like zero common sense. They are only like sensing beings. They do not have any sentience. They don't have any concept of recognizing who or what is a threat. If they see something, they will just go after it. Still really unsure, but basically they go after Harry multiple times, and it's not really clear why they go after Harry multiple times. They go after Harry, they go after a few other students. These are beings that are wraith-like, but not as cool as the ring wraiths from Lord of the Rings. They are just floating there. It's very ambiguous what they do.
They're supposed to be the wardens of Azkaban.
Right, but when you're first introduced, yes, they are spooky. Yes, they are creepy. Think of the phantoms from Scooby-Doo that are like floating around that are blue, but think of them as black. They're floating around, and the only thing they say that they do is they make you go through your darkest memory constantly. That's not really a threat. I mean, it's a little It's not really scary. And so these things are floating around the school trying to find Sirius Black. They have a new dark arts teacher. At this point, we're playing the game of who is the new dark arts teacher and what does he do?
And what is he really?
Yeah, what is he really? So this is movie 3. We've gone through 3 already. We are at Professor Lupin,
Remus Lupin.
Yes, who in later years would play Ares in Wonder Woman, which is a wonderful role for him. And so he comes in. He's actually competent. He actually has abilities and skills. He's teaching the students how to conquer fears and how to face mystical threats, which is great. But Severus Snape is concerned about him. He doesn't trust him. Dumbledore chose him because he felt like he was the best choice. But Snape is like, this guy's up to no good, and I don't trust him, which is, by the 3rd time, you'd think this is probably a good idea. Anyways, Sirius Black is getting to the campus. Basically, he keeps getting there, getting close, and then leaving. But they get to this part where they get a warning saying, hey, guess what? He's going to be here tomorrow. He's going to arrive, and he's going to get Harry. Meanwhile, Hermione the whole time is acting all weird. She keeps randomly appearing in places where she's not, and she's acting all jittery and, out of place. Snape has them look over information on werewolves, as well as the ability for wizards to turn into animals. And and the flip side of that, Hagrid becomes a teacher. Hagrid has his first and only lesson where he has a hippogriff, a bird. It's like a griffin almost. It's a bird
and a horse.
Yeah, it's
it's
a bird and a horse. He has their class look at the thing, and the thing attacks Draco Malfoy.
He provokes it.
Draco Malfoy provokes this creature. The creature attacks Draco. Draco tells his daddy. His daddy then has the animal put to death. There's a whole emotional side story with this that really feels forced. Then they get to the day of Sirius's arrival, and they're going to confront him, and it turns out that Sirius Black is not the threat, that Sirius Black actually cared about Harry's parents, would try to protect them, that the real threat was...
You skipped over the Marauders map.
Okay, the Marauders map. So basically, Ron Weasley's brothers stole a map their first year at the school. This map is very magical because if you say the right magic words, it'll show you where everybody is in the school and where they're going. So you can literally monitor like a security camera, which would have been helpful in the past two movies.
It reminds me of like when Snapchat came out with that thing where you could like, if you had it on, you could see where your friends were or anyone you had their Snapchat, you could see where they were in the world. It's like safety concerns. But this one's like secretive.
Yeah, it's secretive. But he can see that somebody that's supposed to be dead, Peter Pettigrew, is at the campus. And he goes to confront this person, and he's not there. And he's like, what? And so he goes and takes the map, and he's going to keep it for himself. They go to confront Sirius. They find out Sirius is not the threat, that Peter Pettigrew was the threat, that Peter Pettigrew killed Harry's parents. No.
He gave them the information for Voldemort to find them.
Okay, but basically he betrayed Harry's parents to Voldemort, and that he was disguising himself as Ron Weasley's rat for 12 years. And so he revealed himself, and then it was revealed that Lupin was a werewolf. And so they have this huge confrontation. Turns out that Sirius Black was a really good friend of Harry's family, and that he was Harry's godfather, so he should be the one to take Harry since his parents are dead. Severus Snape comes in. He's like, doesn't hear any of that conversation. He goes to attack Sirius Black because he sees him as a threat. The werewolf changes, and he starts attacking the kids. Fast forward, basically, there's a huge thing, and Sirius Black is injured from the werewolf, and the Dementors are here to take Sirius Black, and then they reveal, guess what? Now the Dementors could take your soul. And so they start taking Sirius Black's soul as a punishment for his crimes, and they wake up, and Sirius Black is going to go to jail or have his soul taken from him, so he would be dead. And so Dumbledore's like, hey, Hermione.
Also, before that, when Harry's with Sirius, when the Dementors are there, and someone is able to make the Patronus spell or whatever, and it comes out of nowhere and saves them.
Yeah, there's a spell that Lupin teaches Harry on how to repel a Dementor, but there's like 50 of these things attacking them at once while he's trying to protect his godfather. But somebody across the way away from them launches a large version of the spell, sends them all away, giving them enough time for them to be semi-rescued. So while Sirius Black is waiting for his final execution, Dumbledore approaches Hermione and Harry. He's like, hey, why don't you go back in time and stop this whole thing from happening? And so Hermione reveals that she's had a locket given to her by McGonagall at the very first movie that she's been using to go back in time and be on time for class every single time, which is whole bunches of crazy, because that just means you've been manipulating the time and framework of the world to be on time for class. Anyways, Dumbledore allows this again. He's like, just go back 3 hours. Go back 3 hours and go stop all this craziness from happening. So they go back, they prevent the hippogriff from being killed, and then they use the hippogriff to attack the werewolf, and then they basically find out that Harry was the one who protected Harry from the Dementors because he, was protecting his past self, and so he sends them away. And then they are able to release Sirius Black from prison, get him on the hippogriff, and send him away, and then they're good. And then the movie ends with Sirius Black. They act like it's fine. They act like everything's good, but nobody knows that he was innocent. Nobody knows he didn't murder anybody. Nobody knows that he's actually Harry's godfather and like supposed to take Harry in. And he just runs away. He's still running from the law, and the school should still be under lockdown because this threat is still there. The Dementors technically should still be there, and all the teachers should still believe that Harry's life is in danger because his murderer is going to try to kill him. And yet the movie ends with like this cheery, happy note, and nothing has changed. It's even worse because the threat's not going to be there any longer, but the they don't know that. And so the school is going to be in lockdown indefinitely, but they're not going to address that in the second movie, I don't think.
They don't go into lockdown. It just magically everything's like, hey, go home for summer. It's great. Yeah. So that was there was a lot in this movie because we had to mention a lot of stuff for all the plot to make sense.
Yeah. So if anybody who's not seen the movie, just listen to my summary. I'm so sorry that it felt jumbled because this movie felt jumbled. That is why I rated it so low, because it feels like stuff that shouldn't be there is there. Stuff that isn't there should be there. Like stuff that make things make more sense.
Yeah. So our first point that I think, and we kind of going into what we just said, is that this movie did break from the previous like story beats of the first two. It wasn't a repeat of like Harry goes to get his school stuff. He meets his friends. They go to Hogwarts. You know, there's a mysterious thing that's within the castle they have to figure out. But it still has the false teacher because Lupin, he's not evil this time or wrong or bad. But he has a secret where he's a werewolf.
I mean, when he's a werewolf, he tries to kill people. So that's kind of evil.
It's implied he has no control over it, though. That's why he's like, he takes potions and stuff like that. That's like Sirius tells him, oh, remember who you are or whatever when he starts to transform. But he's still like, you know, a false person in a way. There's no Voldemort shown in this one. It's just his henchmen. So that was a break from the norm, but they're back in that forest again. And then we get to see the village Hogsmeade, I think is what it's called. And they go to the village and there's this thing called the Shrieking Shack. And that was a big plot hole too. So the Shrieking Shack, that's where they have, oh, sorry.
No, but there's no story to it. There's just like, it's there. And then
it's the most haunted place in the Wizarding world, supposedly.
There was nothing haunted about it when they get in there. Secondly, I still want to know, how did the tree change places? So in the last movie, the willow tree, the one that's sentient, was on Hogwarts grounds. Now the tree is outside of the school.
No, it's on Hogwarts.
No, it's not in the ground. So in the second movie, they see the gate. So it's in like the grounds of the school.
Yeah, yes, it changed place on the grounds of the school, but it's still at Hogwarts.
Right. But it's changed locations, but yet now it also has a secret passage to
the Shrieking Shack, which I thought was a couple miles away at this village.
Yeah, because the teachers, when they take a field trip down there, they act like they have to take like an official trip like out of town. And yet this movie makes it seem like later on that this is like 20 feet away.
Yeah, like it. You know when you go to like a college and it has like, what is it called when the campus is like in the city?
It's college town. So there's the university, and then there's like buildings built just for the students to go shopping that are like little shopping plazas, little strip malls with like pizza places and food lions and things like that.
Yeah, well, they have like, I think both the colleges we went to had isolated campuses, which is like, it's not built into the city. Like your classes aren't like in a building right next to like a business. There are some colleges that are like that, but it's almost like Hogwarts is like an isolated campus, but there's like the college town that's like right outside, but the students need permission slips and chaperones to go there. And when they portrayed in the film, it looks like, okay, this is a ways away, but there is a tunnel from the Whomping Willow all the way to the Shrieking Shack, however far away that is, and they just travel it. It's like,
and it takes minutes when honestly the way they portray it earlier in the movie, it looks like it would take hours to get there. Once again, nonsensical.
Yeah, so I was really confused about that. I was confused about the location of that whole, because in the Shrieking Shack, that's where they find out that Peter Pettigrew was alive and that he was the real betrayer and everything like that. And you're right, Severus Snape did not hear that conversation, so he doesn't know, I don't think.
Right.
But he did. Oh, sorry, he did see Pettigrew, right?
He did see Pettigrew.
Yeah.
I just thought of another thing. So the Weasley's dad is like one of the leading experts in magic, and he's like a head of a organization. And for 12 years, he had a wizard hiding in his house as the family's pet rat, and there was no way he knew or had any sense of like needing to, like any hints. But also, this man was a rat for 12 years, and there wasn't a time when the spell wore off for...
Yeah. Also, he lived in that house with those kids. Like, how many times was there inappropriate things that happened because they thought it was a rat? Like, how many times have you, like, with our cats, like, oh, I'm just gonna, go and hop in the shower. It's just my pet cat. Like, there's nothing weird. But then you start thinking about it and you're like, what in the world? He lived with his family and they thought he was a rat for reasons, if you start thinking about it, him being this rat for 12 years in this family that's been passed down from siblings is creepy and inappropriate,
but
and
also
weird.
you're telling me that this spell can last 12 years. There's no turning it off, and even if there was, that one of the ministers of magic didn't recognize there was something up with the family pet, that obviously this man does not know how to operate and function like a rat. So there's got to be some kind of sign.
Yeah. And it was just like, it just felt so weird, especially to see him as this like minor character for the first two movies and to find out he's actually a major character.
It's not even a character. He's a rat for 2 movies. And then he's like, surprise. It was just shock value. Honestly, it was just like, wouldn't that be funny if your family pet was a evil wizard?
I bet that they didn't ever tell the family about him, because if it got out, well, wait, I think Severus might have known that he had been Scabbers. He told Dumbledore that he had been his pet rat, but like if that got out, like the point you're making, like that could have put his father's job on the line, because he's like, you can't even tell that. Yeah,
because let's say the dad was talking about work at home. Now Scabbers is Peter Pettigrew and is able to hear the conversations.
Yeah, but I found out that's one of the reasons why that Voldemort kept him around, because he could infiltrate like the other side. And so Peter Pettigrew, who is a Death Eater, is that what they're called?
Yes.
Voldemort's followers.
His, like, death cult, yeah.
And he is known as, well, they thought he was dead, but he was known to work with Voldemort, I think, right?
Yeah. So, once again, I noticed a similarity in this character to another one, Grima Wormtongue from The Lord of the Rings.
He's called Wormtail.
Wormtail.
That's his nickname.
But Grima Wormtongue from The Lord of the Rings, who was a spy for Saruman and who was, basically manipulating Theoden. And then when he was kicked out, he returned to Saruman's side as a puppet, as a pawn.
Which is exactly what happens to, and they just call him Wormtail after this, by the way. That's his nickname, Wormtail, and that's all they call him after that. So I might be wrong about that. I think they didn't know that Peter Pettigrew Wormtail was a Death Eater. I think they thought it was Sirius, and that Sirius killed him because they found his finger, but really he like cut his finger off and then got turned into a rat. So yeah, all of that happened with that character. And he's going to be coming up later in later movies, I know. So now we have this whole story arc that we're going to be following. But it is interesting you mentioned Lord of the Rings, because that seems like it's taken from Lord of the Rings. But also the Nazgul, the Wraiths, like you were saying, the Dementors are very similar in feeling. And like, I don't even know, are they wizards? What did they say they were, the Dementors?
The Dementors, they were saying they're creatures. They weren't humans at all. They were just like these like mystical creatures.
Yeah, but it felt like, Nazgul, just plop it right into this movie. And then also for this movie, the tonal shift. So the first two films had this like we would say whimsy. It's bright, colorful, like pixie dust magic. And this movie is just straight up dark, rainy, gritty angst from the beginning. How do you felt about that?
I didn't feel like there was any proper progression. Like, you would think, okay, they're going to slowly evolve after, like, a pivotal point. Like, the end of this movie could have been the pivotal point to change the tonal of the film from la 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 to, like, something darker, more serious to grasp with. But they just drop you right into that. And much like it is growing up as a person, you go from like the age of 8, 9, 10, 11. For the most part, it's like the world is flowers and rainbows and puppies. And you get, ambitious dreams like I want to be a cowboy when I grow up. And then something happens, whether it just be growing up, whether it be school, whether it be some kind of event, changes the tone of your mind from that to more of a, maybe not serious emo phase, but like you start becoming more aware of reality, aware of good and evil in the world, aware of other people and how they can manipulate you. You start becoming aware of that, so you start becoming more sober-minded. It doesn't mean you have less fun, but you become more aware of the reality of the world around you. There needed to be a moment like this where there was, he had trouble in the past two movies, but everything kind of was fun at the end. There needed to be a moment where something pivotal was going to happen in this film to change the tone, like almost immediately. Like they should have started off fun and whimsical and have the revelation moment where there's like, oh, now I can find out more about the death of my parents, who was involved, all these things. And then you find out that the person who you thought did it didn't do it. That could be a pivotal moment. But instead, it's just immediately dropped in. It's like dark, gritty, darker tones, and not just like emotional tones or dialogue tones. Like the color tone of the film is dramatically darker than it is in the first two movies.
Yeah, it's like they turned 13 and they were like, well, we got to be all angsty now, just like a light switch. Just like they became teenagers, we're turning the switch. Turn the lights off, we're going in the dark. Like that's how it felt. Rain and all the angst. It was like almost like when you start going through your emo phase or your goth phase or whatever, it's like starting to creep in.
It's like whenever I went from listening to I listened to Toby Mac for like my 7th and 8th grade years in high school. And then my friends introduced me to Christian hard rock. And then Christian hard rock introduced me to, new metal and emo metal. I had that weird pivotal point where I was listening to music by like 3 Days Grace and Linkin Park that, it sounds silly now, but there's a dramatic shift in that tone and that moment where I'm no longer listening to like poppy, funky beats. I'm listening to, stuff that is emotional, makes you think, makes you reflect. So this movie, the first two are like pop, silly, funny with like a, family friendly adventure. And then there's such a dramatic tonal shift where it feels like, don't go see this with your family. Go see this by yourself with your friends. It's like, why? Where's the core shift here?
This isn't for your parents anymore. This is for all the cool kids out there. And it worked on that demographic of that time. I know, like it became a huge thing. Mm-hmm. So how about we kind of sum up these little points that we were really talking about the whole film and moving on to another subject. Okay, what does magic do? What are its rules and limitations? That's our biggest one, because
once again, there is just no rhyme or reason to how they handle the magic. It's like sometimes things need spells, sometimes they don't, and sometimes you could just exist. Like Harry, at the beginning of the film, Harry says not a word. He doesn't lift a wand. He looks at that lady and she starts inflating and floating off into space.
Right. And then even in the beginning when he's a little kid, he frees the snake on accident and everything like that. No wand or anything. But we are introduced to time travel in this. Okay, I would think, because they've said there's been movies made about it. They've been said if time travel is ever possible, it would be like a high crime because you could affect so many things. Like McGonagall just gives a time turner, which if I was writing this story, I would think like a time turner, there would only be like one or two made in the whole world and they're like under security, because I just feel like going through time is such a danger. You're playing with so many factors, and Dumbledore's just like, I'll just use the time turner. And I'm like, whoa, wait, what? We can now just go back in time? Why can't we just go back in time and like deal with Voldemort when he's less powerful? Why can't we just go back in time and prevent Harry's parents from getting killed? Why can't we change this one thing of events and break out what's his name, Sirius out of the of prison, but we can't change like other events? Like maybe I might be missing some rules here, but I do feel like it was not regulated enough in the story for these kids to have access to something like a time turner. Not
only that, she was using it for the past 3 movies to get herself to class on time. And I'm like, first off, you've given a 12-year-old the ability to manipulate time, and she uses it to be to class on time, which means she's been doing it multiple times a week. And I'm like, how many other things has been manipulated because of her shenanigans? My magical question that still bothers me, how do wands work? Because I'm going to start getting upset. There's no semblance of explanation of like, can I point my wand and something will launch out? What will launch out? What is that? Do I have to say a spell every time? Because in the scene where Sirius Black, Peter Pettigrew, Lupin, and Harry were all like standing off against each other, they all have their wands ready. Sirius Snape puts the wand to the neck of, I believe, Lupin, and he acts like it's a gun, and he's putting it to his neck, and Lupin's like frozen still because he doesn't want to get hurt. If it takes a spell to launch something from your wand, then doing that is useless, because what that does is just like, it's just for show. Because if in the time it takes you to say the 2 words to do something, or a word, somebody could like knock their hand free or move around to get out of the way of it. It's not like it's like a knife or something like that. But then again, I'm like, is there an element where you could just like point your wand and something's going to come out? Is it like, so there's no real reasoning behind that, because why would you treat it like a knife or a gun if it takes something for me to say to do something with it? Because all you have to do is like move your elbow or something, and that thing is now away from my body.
Well, does magic obey like the simple principle of physics, like another thing we watch, like Full Metal Alchemist, where it's like you had to give something to get something, but like matter cannot be created nor destroyed.
Also, where is the magic coming from? Is it coming from inside them?
Yeah, because we know this because it has to be genetic, because you can be born with magical abilities from parents who do not have magical abilities. Kind of like, I think that's the same rules for the Avatar universe with Aang and Katara, not with the blue people. But like some people are born with the ability to bend and some people are not.
Or My Hero Academia, which is the third time we've referenced it on this podcast.
Yeah.
Your parents could have no powers and you could be born with a power. Your parents could have powers and you could be born with no powers.
Yeah, I think it's rarer. I think that exists, but like being born a wizard to Muggle parents is more common because Hermione is like that. And I think Harry's mom was like that too, right?
I think the dad was a wizard. The mom was not.
His mom was a wizard, but her family wasn't, because the sister, his aunt's not a witch.
Okay. And so it's just that. Also, we had that moment where didn't somebody take Hermione's wand?
Oh no! So at the Shrieking Shack, I think Severus like disarms Harry's wand, and Harry uses Hermione's wand.
Right.
But in the first movie, he used wands that were not like his wand. Remember when he was in the shop and he made things explode? So why could he use Hermione's wand?
Especially since they're supposed to be like linked to a person.
Yeah, I didn't get that. I'm like, why was he able to use her wand?
Once again, convenience wins when it comes to these movies. It's take the simplest route out of the situation.
But going back to the whole Full Metal Alchemist thing, like in that show, he's like, oh, this isn't magic. It has to obey rules. And they tell us the rules that have to be obeyed in order for it to work. So in reality, like matter cannot be created nor destroyed. So, and also like you have to generate energy and power certain ways. So how does magic work like that? Is it like, oh, it's magic, so it defies physics? Is there any information about how it works in the world at all?
And I keep asking this every single movie. Are there a set list of spells? Can a wizard create a spell from nothing? Is it like a list of 20 and you can't go any past the 20? Or can you keep saying the same spell over and over again? Or is there like hidden spells nobody knows yet? Like who wrote the spells? Where is this coming from? All of this stuff is like, I'm sure somewhere in the books there's an explanation or something like this. But when you create movies for a universe, you have to let the non-reader audience know what's going on, because all this feels like is we do not trust the audience with the lore of this franchise. So we're just going to give them content and they're just going to have to deal with it. And that might not be the mentality, but you're expecting us to just kind of, go with the flow. It's definitely suspension of disbelief. And there's a certain level of it to where you can be like, let the crowd just enjoy the film. You don't have to give them everything. But this movie is not giving us anything. No rules, no regulations. There's no consequences for hardly anything. And so things just happen, and there are rules that get said and they get disobeyed and nobody cares. And the rules that they are given are broken, like the wand rule. I mean, Harry's wand should be Harry's wand. It should not work for anybody else.
Or it would backfire, because that happened in the shop. When he was shopping for his wand, he had the wrong wand and it didn't do what he wanted.
Correct. But he could just use Hermione's and it's like, fine, okay, great. And it's just, what's the point then? I have a problem with suspension of disbelief when I can no longer believe what I'm watching. I can no longer like immerse myself into this world because the world seems too far-fetched. It's not, I mean, you're living in a world that's modern, 1990s, early 2000s world, and you're telling me nobody has, no human has been like, something's going on here, especially when anybody and everybody could get to Hogwarts. Like, how is nobody suspicious for 1,000 years? So again, I will harp on this until somebody explains something different to me, that the magic is nonsense in this world, until I see sense.
Yeah. Another thing I didn't quite understand. So the Marauders map, Fred and George find it in Filch's office and they explain how they get it. But there's certain words you have to say. It's like, I'm solemnly swear I'm up to no good. And then that appears, that makes the thing appear, the map appear. And then you say mischief managed and then it goes away. But how do they figure that out? How do they figure out the words to say? If they just took it from Filch's office, it just looks like a blank piece of parchment paper when it's not in use. So how do they figure out how to get it to work?
Oh, yeah, but also these guys are kind of jerks because, well, they established that. But the past two movies, children have been frozen, people have been hurt or killed, and this map could have saved lives. This map could have ended the problem quickly. This map could have shown where certain teachers were to get help. And they're like, nah, we're going to use it to pull pranks and be silly. And this feels like, okay, this would have been helpful in movie 1 or movie 2 when the stakes are just even a little more serious because now a bunch of students are threatened.
But also, like, how does the map decide who to track? Because it only shows like 5 people at a time, but there's tons of people at Hogwarts.
Yeah, is it based on my desire? Like, if I desire to see Snape, is it going to find Snape, or is it like Snape is out of range right now? Please wait until Snape is within the next 100 feet. Is it like that?
Yeah, it was very confusing. Like, I think we liked the concept of it. It was enjoyable in a way where it was like, okay, this is kind of cool, but it brought up a lot more of like confusing questions of like, what is the logic behind this item?
Right. So that's what I meant when we first started this podcast for this episode. It's like, it's a bunch of stuff sewn together into a movie for this one. That's why I rate it so low. It's like events and things happen that are disconnected and discombobulated, but they're happening so fast that you don't really get a chance to sit down and think about anything. It's after the movie. You're like, wait a second. Why is this okay? Why is this happening? What is happening? Because it's constantly at breakneck speed, but it's just a bunch of scenes grafted together into a movie rather than a flow of plot like the last one.
Another random plot element, or I don't know, we thought it was a little silly, was Lupin being a werewolf, where we learn now in this movie werewolves are real. I mean, we kind of could see where, because they already confirmed a bunch of magical creatures in other films, but they're like, yeah, werewolves are real. And then Lupin's a werewolf, and we just kind of did deal with that. And I made the observation, which I feel coming from J.K. Rowling, this might be legitimate, because after all of that happened with Peter Pettigrew, and Lupin's there because he was part of the Marauders when he was a kid, I believe. He knows what the map is, because when Harry shows it to him, he knows what it is. So while he's in that squabble with, Peter Pettigrew and Sirius and Severus and everything,
And Harry,
the moon comes out and he turns into a werewolf against his will. And at the end of the movie, Harry's like, hey, you're packing up and leaving. Did they fire you? And he's like, no, I'm resigning. He's like, why? He's like, well, soon it's going to come out that I'm a werewolf, and the parents of the children will not want their teacher teaching their children that's like me. And I could see that J.K. Rowling's using that as a way to talk about like alternative lifestyles, or not even that, just it's like this theme of discrimination, that there's a lot of people who are misunderstood and that they suffer for it. So the whole thing with Severus wanting the kids to figure out that he was a werewolf, kind of trying to like out him and stuff like that. I could see that coming from her at this time, of like that being like a theme of like, hey, maybe we're afraid of him for, no reason. But that being said, he is an uncontrollable monster when he is a werewolf, and he doesn't like being a werewolf. So it doesn't, that falls apart the more you look at it. So I'm not quite sure, but that whole conversation he had with Harry felt like that, where he was like, they're going to find out my dirty secret, and I will be disgraced, and I can't be a teacher anymore. I can't have my job anymore because people won't want their children to associate with me, type of thing. Kind of like the whole Nazi-ish racism themes we have going on, where like, because we're really getting into it now with like the purebloods and the mudbloods and everything like that. So that was just my thought about him being a werewolf in that conversation at the end. I don't know where that's going to go. I don't know what we're going to see him again. Probably. I don't know where his storyline's going, but okay, we'll go ahead and talk about the end of the film. Unless there's points you're like, oh, we didn't get to that and we wanted to.
No, we touched on everything that had any significance. It just, again, they wanted to have so many key points to this film that none of it had weight. It's like, I'm trying to think of a good example, but basically if somebody pointed out that I have 5 really fast cars and I have 3 mansions and I have 3 yachts and I own an island, and it's like it starts listing a bunch of really big cool things, it all kind of starts losing its significance after a while, because you're like, well, then if you have a bunch of big things, then what's the thing that stand out? What's the thing that I'm supposed to notice the most, other than you are presenting me with a bunch of big things to look at?
So the ending, Sirius makes his escape on Buckbeak, which is the name of the hippogriff. So I know that there is a narratively there's a parallel with hippogriff and Sirius, hippogriff. His name's Buckbeak. Buckbeak and Sirius, because Buckbeak is wrongly accused and is sentenced to death, just like Sirius Black. Both Hermione and Harry rescue both of them, and both of them escape together. So I understand that that's like, symbolism, story parallels, and narrative structure to give us themes to digest in a way of like, okay, like they're flying away. And I like that part of the story. But the logic that we just you went through at the very beginning, no one knows Sirius is innocent, like you said. They're still looking for Buckbeak. He's still sentenced to death. And then, okay, so during, I can't remember how this happened, but Harry's broom gets destroyed somehow in a Quidditch match. At the end, Sirius sends him like a really expensive, fast new broom. And I'm like, how did he get money? Where did he get the money to buy this broom? And he's still at large. He still has to avoid the Dementors and the Ministry of Magic and everything like that. And he has now also this on the run animal that I guess he's taking care of. Well, how did he get the money to send the broom? I know it's such a small question, but it's like you mentioned everything else before with that. It's like this is not tied up. Everyone's acting like it's no big deal, but it is a big deal. And like, yeah, they're like, oh, Sirius has to go into hiding and he can't take Harry to be his godfather. I get that. But like the concern for him was just taken out of the whole thing after all that happened after his escape.
No, I would agree. I tried to look for like a nice wrap up moral to the story kind of thing, but it's just so poorly constructed, but also so many loose ends that nothing is tied up at the end. Nothing is resolved. You're left with just like a pile of facts. That's why it's just like, I don't like it that much as a film. I mean, the lesson you could probably pull away from is loyalty and keeping your word and being not honest, but like devotion to the people in your life, the people you care about, be devoted even to the point of self-sacrifice, because Sirius Black was innocent and he cared about Harry's family and he tried to save Harry's family's life. He didn't want to see them suffer, and he would do anything to protect them, even if it meant taking the blame for it to, protect Harry.
Yeah, I definitely see the theme of like what makes a true friend, because you have the whole Peter Pettigrew betraying everybody, like what makes real friendship, and that's loyalty and courage and all those things, which is good. I totally agree.
But at the same time, it's like there's consequences even to that, where he's on the run, he's injured, and he's I don't need every movie to wrap up nicely, but there's this, it's literally like if you were sewing a blanket and you just left everything frayed and all the ends just like hanging loose, and you're like, we'll come back to it eventually. It's like finish a part, do something, wrap it up or something.
Yeah. I did like the time turner. So when I say this, I didn't like the concept of the time turner and time travel, because I'm like, that just makes it messy and complicated, and like I felt like it was bad writing, but good writing in the way that I really liked them having to retrace their steps and fit the puzzle pieces together. That was really engaging for me. And I'm like, I like this, but at the same time, like I just know that it causes so much trouble in so many different ways. But I liked the sequence of them going back in time and having to figure it all out. Like that's very engaging, and it was fun, and it had me kind of on the edge of my seat of like, oh, I had to remember, what did we just watch, and things like, it's kind of like those movies like Memento, or I'm trying to think of, or like The Sixth Sense, I guess, but like when you watch it again, you're like, what did I miss? How do I figure it out? Not as intense as those movies, but it had that feeling to it. But like, yeah, the time turner, a problem, I will admit. Okay, so last thing we have written, just the funny thing, is the way they end the film on the freeze frame that we thought was really cheesy. I don't know why. They've never ended a film like that before in any of the Harry Potter movies we've seen so far.
But it's basically Harry's flying on his new broomstick, and he just flies at the camera, and it freezes while he's like being jet streamed, pulled into like this time loop or whatever. It looks like he's being like light speed pulled into like a wormhole. He's like stretched, and it looks really bad. Not to mention, like, the creatures in this film look pretty bad. The CGI is going back to movie 1 again for some bizarre reason. Like, they got an extra budget on the second one, so they actually use practical effects, and then they're like, we could use this money on like catering, so let's go back to the original effects of the first one, because Lupin as a werewolf looks awful.
It was really bad.
Looks awful.
It was really bad.
Also, the anamorph transitions of people turning into animals and vice versa was
for sure
bad.
Oh, I just remembered. This is the first time we get the new Dumbledore actor. So the Dumbledore actor of the first two films passed away, and he played Dumbledore as very reserved, quiet, and like kind of just mysteriously wise. This Dumbledore is much more loud. And I don't know how else to explain it. Do you have any?
I wouldn't say loud as much as he actually is doing something.
So you like the new Dumbledore?
Yes, because the first two, he's like, I don't know, you can do it. We believe in you. I believe in Harry Potter. But then this one is like, oh, here's a plan of action. We're going to do this. You're going to do that. Let's do this together. And he's actually like, emotional. He's, driven.
He's much more physical. He's like getting up and down and doing stuff.
He's in motion. He's a mobile character rather than he's, because the other one, rest in peace, but he would just stand there and just be there. And
I liked the old Dumbledore. I liked that he was so mysterious and like soft-spoken and kind. And then this one just feels like he's like, oh, rub some dirt in it. You fell down, whatever. Keep going.
The first one reminds me of like the old Walmart greeters who would just stand there and they wouldn't check anything. They
here's a sticker, son.
Yeah, he's just like, he'd slowly raise his arm to wave at you as you're leaving and slowly bring it back down. It might as well be an animatronic. But this one's like if they put a dose of adrenaline in one of those workers and he started chasing after one of the somebody with a shopping cart. I didn't get to check your receipt. He's gone.
Yeah, this Dumbledore would tackle you to the ground.
Yeah.
But he won't because it's somewhat out of the character. But it's a marked difference in how they're portrayed. So I think we've gotten to the end of this movie and talking about pretty much everything we wanted to talk about. And we are almost to the center, to the middle. Goblet of Fire is next. It's number 4 in the 8 movies that we got to watch. And we get some Robert Pattinson action in the 4th movie. Just saying. Can't wait to see him again. Love him. Anything you wanted to add before we sign off?
Once again, this woman keeps finding ways for me to watch movies with Robert Pattinson, and only one of them have been of my choice.
Well, we'll see you next time.
Bibbidi bobbidi boop. We'll see you later.
Oh gosh, I want to think of one.
Zip zap zoop. My name is Hannah, and you're watching Disney Channel. I
know that would be my wand. It would be all like glowy and sparkly.
But it would only let you write the Disney symbol.
Yeah. What was Wizards of Waverly Place? Did they have spells, or did they just like point their wands and be like, boom?
I think they had spells, but I think they mostly would just point it, and like whatever their ambition was, they would just kind of do.
Well, you know everything's going to be a breeze and you can make your bed with the slightest of ease.
Yes, please.
Yes, please. Okay, bye everyone. Bye.